All right, let's get into this story. We're talking about a guy named Devon Levesque, a man who pushes his body to absolutely unbelievable limits. But the real story, the one we're going to unpack here, is why. It's an incredible journey of turning deep pain into a powerful sense of purpose. Okay, so I want you to picture this. You're at 28,000 feet on Mount Everest, making your way down from the top. Your oxygen is running out, there's a line of 100 people blocking your way on a ledge that's just 5 inches wide, and right below you is a sheer 5,000-foot drop. This is where Devon's story really kicks into high gear, a genuine life-or-death moment that shows you the kind of world he chooses to operate in. And yeah, Everest is just one part of his story. This is a guy who didn't just climb the world's highest mountain, he did a backflip at the peak. He has bear-crawled the entire New York City Marathon. He's biked across America. He's stood on the highest peaks of South America and Antarctica. I mean, the list of physical achievements is just staggering. Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. Why? What on earth drives a person to push themselves to these kinds of extremes? We're talking about terrifying, painful limits. Well, the answer isn't just about adrenaline or trying to get famous. It's much, much deeper than that. To really understand the why, we've got to go back to his childhood, to a time of incredible loss that he carried with him in total silence for over a decade. So when he was just 11 years old, Devon's mother died from cancer. Then, only 5 years later, at 16, he lost his father, who was his best friend, his coach, to suicide. And for the next 10 years, he just didn't talk about it with anyone. He wouldn't even tell people how his dad died. Devon has this perfect way of describing it. He says when you don't talk about stuff, that weight just keeps building up in your backpack. So for a decade, he was lugging around all this grief that he'd never dealt with, and that backpack was just getting heavier and heavier. He needed a release, and he found it in maybe the most extreme way you could imagine. And this brings us to the moment where his healing journey really kicks off. It's the story of what he calls the hardest thing he's ever done. It's where all that physical pain became the key to finding his mental strength. So the challenge, which was actually an idea from another adventurer, Ross Edgley, was simple, but absolutely brutal. Bear crawl the entire 26.2-mile New York City Marathon. On his hands and knees, the whole way. Now, this whole thing had 2 layers to it, which is what makes it so brilliant. The public reason, the what, was to raise awareness for suicide prevention. But the personal reason, the real why, was the game changer. For the 12 months he was training, getting up at 2 a.m. to just crawl for hours, people kept asking him why he was doing it. And every single time, he had to tell them the story of his father. So after a full year of training, he did it. He finished the marathon in a grueling 20 hours and 48 minutes of non-stop crawling. And in doing so, he raised an incredible $2 million for suicide prevention and veterans charities. Just a massive, massive success. But this right here, this is where the magic happened. He says that every time he had to explain why he was putting himself through this insane ordeal, it was like therapy for him. He was finally, after 10 long years, talking about the trauma he'd been holding in. So that's the key takeaway, right? The bear crawl wasn't just about the physical punishment. That whole year of training was actually a year of therapy. Yeah, he was getting stronger physically, for sure, but the real strength he was building was up here, in his mind. So this whole journey of facing his past didn't just end when he crossed the finish line. It completely changed the way he lived his life and led him to create a super clear set of rules for pretty much every decision he makes now. He figured out that if he wanted to stay on the right path and actually find some contentment, he needed a set of core principles. Kind of like a personal mission statement he could filter everything through, every opportunity, every choice. And this whole experience boiled down to a new life philosophy, one he lives by every single day. It's built on just 5 pillars: family, health, community, freedom of time, and giving back. That's it. A simple but really powerful guide for where to put his energy. And he is serious about it. He literally says that if a phone call, a meeting, or some new opportunity doesn't line up with one of those 5 things, the answer is just no. It's how he protects his time and makes sure he's spending his life on what actually matters to him. And what's really cool is that this newfound clarity, this focus, eventually led him right back to where his life began.
See, after growing up on a farm, Devon spent years in the New York City hustle, running nightclubs, training high-powered people, chasing that big city version of success. But after this whole journey of healing, he found himself right back where he started, living on a farm in New Jersey, building a life around those 5 pillars. It's a perfect full-circle story.
And that's really the core of it all. The freedom he was chasing wasn't in the money or the excitement of the city. True freedom, for him, was found in living a life with intention, a life with purpose, one that was aligned with his deepest values. So if you take one thing away from Devon Levesque's story, it should be this. Sometimes doing the hardest physical things can be a gateway. They can actually be a really powerful kind of therapy, a way to work through your past and find a clearer path to what you're really meant to be doing. And that kind of leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about. For Devon, the hard thing was crawling a marathon and climbing mountains. For us, it probably doesn't need to be that extreme. But it does make you wonder, right? What hard thing in your own life might just be the key to setting you free?